All right, my name's Mr. Butler. I'm a math teacher, room 302 if you ever want to come see me. And today I'm going to do a lesson on conditional statements. They're pretty simple. You guys will get it quick. It's not too bad. So, a conditional statement is an if-then statement. So you start with if, then, okay, it's that simple. All right, so we'll take an example first. If it snows, then school is canceled. And if I make a spelling mistake, don't worry about it. I'm a terrible speller. But this is your basic statement, right? If something, then something else, right? If it snows, then school is canceled. Every conditional statement has four parts, right? There is your if part, right? There's your if part. There is the part right after the if, or the hypothesis part. Okay. Hypothesis. Right? There is your then. And then there is your conclusion. So, every conditional statement has each of these parts. You start with an if, you move on to your hypothesis, which is always right after the if. Then you have your then, always right after the hypothesis. And finally, you have your conclusion. So, if we look at our statement up here, we have our if, right? Our hypothesis is it snows. Okay? We have our then, and then we have our conclusion, right? If it snows, our hypothesis, then school is canceled, our conclusion. It's that simple. If-then statements. Now, to make our lives a lot easier, we have shorthand for everything, right? So, the if is denoted by if. It's always the same, right? Hypothesis is called P, right? Our then is an arrow. And our conclusion is a Q, right? So this is our shorthand for everything up here, right? Hypothesis is P, then is arrow, Q is your conclusion. So if you move from the bottom down, right, we have our top statement. If it snows, then school is canceled. We have our middle statement. If, hypothesis, then conclusion. And we have our bottom. If P, arrow, Q. Right? So we put it all together. Ifs, all the same. Right? It snows is our hypothesis, or it is called P. They're all the same thing. Right? Then, arrow. All the same thing. Just different ways to write it. And finally, school is canceled. That is our conclusion. And it is Q. All the same thing, just different ways to write it. So, the nice thing about conditional statement, and as we move forward, right, this shorthand is going to become very, very helpful. Right? It's going to become very helpful. And it is important to write it down and remember it. So, here's the upshot. Right? We have our pieces to our puzzle. Right? We have our if, right, in our conditional statement. It is our if, right? We have our P, which is our hypothesis. We have our arrow, which is our then. And we have our Q, which is our conclusion. A lot of times we will drop the if out, so you will see something that looks like this. This means if P, then Q, or if hypothesis, then conclusion. Okay, and that is our conditional statement. Before I move on, we'll do one more. Work through one more of these all together. We'll find our pieces, and then you can move on to the next one. So, our new conditional statement is if I study, then I pass the class. All right? So we know we have our four parts to this. We have our if. We have our hypothesis, or P. Right? We have our then, or arrow. And we have our conclusion, or Q. Right? So we find our pieces. If is always if. Right? Our hypothesis is the thing that comes right after the if. So for now it is I study. We have our then, right, or our arrow, which is then. Okay? And then we have our Q, which is our conclusion. Always comes after the then. I pass. Right? So it is important when you look at a conditional statement to take a look at it, get your four puzzle pieces in, right? Your if, your P, your arrow, and your Q. Okay? And then figure out your statement as a whole. This will become more important as we move forward. So, again, one last time. P to Q, that is your conditional statement. If gets dropped out. P, I study. Arrow, then, and Q, conclusion, I pass. If I study, then I pass.